looming recession. Inflation at record high. The rates are hiking. The logistical problem still there all across the world. The crypto market is down, the stock market is down, and now we're hearing that the job market is slowing down very fast with hiring freezes and of course layoffs, unfortunately. Does it mean we can never ever think about retirement in this environment? That is what we will try to figure out today. Hello everyone, I'm Yoram from Economia, your destination for financial independence, spending and investing wisely. So, working for 30, 40 years, hard work, 9-to-5 job, and then enjoying a well-deserved retirement. Then you can go gardening, fishing, traveling, see the grandchildren. Dream come true, right? Well, that's what we've been told, and that's what previous generations have enjoyed since at least World War II and a bit before. However, in the current economic situation and the change in population, in demographic changes all across the world, is it really something that can happen to us? We're going to discuss the details, the bad, the ugly, the worst, but more importantly, what we can do about it. And we'll talk about it immediately, just after you click the like button down below to help us a lot. Go ahead, I'm waiting on my hammock. Stopping the 9-to-5 work and finally, after so many decades, enjoying retirement. Then every month your pension is being paid, the healthcare is taken care of, and everything goes very well. It's just enjoyment time. Or is it? Actually, that's what it's been for the longest time, but it's less and less sure. Used to be that people would retire at 60 after working those almost 40 years, right? Now, it's more likely it's becoming 62, 65-year-old already in many countries, and actually 70 is in sight for some of the work because of the change in the way we're working and of course life expectancy. Then there's the benefits, I guess, still gonna be there. The healthcare, is it still gonna be there? There's a lot here to discuss and dig up. But before we go further, we have to look at actually how retirement is paid. And actually, there are two main systems that we all know. There is the state pension one, or pay as you go, which is basically a defined benefit. And there's the other one, that's more the capitalization, where you have a defined contribution. And after, the benefit is going to be based on your contribution. Those are the two main systems. So if we look at the first one, the pay as you go, so like I mentioned, you pay while you're working. When you stop working, you receive a defined benefit. And that's fantastic, right? It's your money that's working for you. But actually, it's not the way it works. It's more like the people who are actually working that are paying forward to the people that have already retired. So you're actually paying for the people that have retired, with the hope that the people that come after you will pay for you when you retire. And that's was created or thought of when the populations were improving, where you had about 4 to 5 workers for one retiree. So there were enough people to pay for you and you didn't have to pay much money. Now, in the G7 countries, so the 7 largest economies, we are more like 2 workers for one retiree, which means there is not enough money to pay for the retirement benefit of this retiree. This is bad. How the system cannot continue working, there's not enough money. So basically the government, what they have to do is make you work longer, so you retire longer. We talked about that a bit in the introduction. They have to increase how much you pay when you're working, or decrease how much money you're getting when you're retiring, or actually a mix of all of this. Problem is that you're really changing the rules of the game as we are playing it, and that's really, really tough. And that's have a big impact in the recent elections, for example, in French general election and presidential election in France recently, and it's being talked about a lot in Germany actually nowadays. If we're looking at the second system, capitalization system, where you put money into a nest egg that you're investing and hopefully grow and you can draw from, this is based on the assumption that the stock market is going to give you a good return over time and for the longest time, right? And that's what has happened, right? If we look back in the last 50 years or more, on average, the stock market has provided 7% return. So over time, you can accumulate a lot of money. However, more recently, you see the quote here, the experts are warning that we have to be ready for lower returns after the decades we've just had. And look at this. The historic long-term trend indicates that the 10-year forward real annualized return of only 1.9%. And it's up from December of 2021. The forecast was 0.2%. That's not really good. And on top of that, you have the healthcare costs that keep on going up. Of course, we live longer, need to take care more, and of course, taxes are going to be there. Government have to find the money somewhere with all those costs increasing. And I mentioned that probably there are problems with the pay-as-you-go scheme, of course, there. Plus, there is the thing now that's on everybody's mind, is inflation. We used to have very low inflation, and starting this year, inflation has been going through the roof everywhere. Let's look a bit at a few figures right now. In the past 8 years, inflation has remained under 3% per year for the G7 countries, as you can see on screen. But because of the pandemic-related stimuli, the logistical issues, the war in Ukraine, and other geopolitical issues across the world, everything has been going up, right? And if we look at countries are reporting 40 years high inflation. Japan has been in stagflation, so stagnation and deflation for a long time. I talked about it in a previous video. Now, registered 2.7% last month's increase. In the US, it's 8.6%. In Canada, it's 7.7%. Singapore is over 3% after being at 2.5% for the longest time. Those are big increase. And that's causing a trouble for everybody, for us consumers, as well as for our money. If we keep our money in our pockets, the value of the money goes down. What can we do about that? That's what we're going to discuss immediately. You need to know how much money you'll need for retirement and how to get there. Because otherwise, you don't have an objective. So, basically there are two ways to calculate how much money you need to put aside. Yes, two methods. The 20x rule and the 4% rule. That's it. Those two main ones, and they are actually connected. We'll go into detail. But first, how do we know how much money you need, right? Well, you need to figure out how much money you need to live every month or every year, right? You already know that. We discussed that you needed a budget. That's the best way to know how much expenses you have, right? And after, you're going to figure out how much you will need when you retire. To give you an idea, the average American retirement is $60,000 a year. Actually, the median is a bit lower at $50,000, and this is before tax. In Japan, when I'm based, it's much lower. So the average retirement income is $13,000 a year. It's very low. But that's the state pension, and most people in Japan would have maybe an extra pension from their employer, or they have their savings. Japan is well known for having a very high rate of household savings. So that's how that's where the money would come, I should say. But more on that later. Let's say, for calculation purpose, that you need $100,000 a year to live in retirement. That's a very high number, I know, especially compared to the number I just gave you, but just it's going to help us to calculate. So to reach those $100,000 a year, let's take the 20x rule or 20x system to start. So the 20x system, where does it come from? Well, basically, at the time you were thought of, most people would live for 25 years after retiring. You know where I'm going with that? So if you live 25 years, you need to multiply what you need by 25 to find the total amount you'll need to put aside. So in our case here, $100,000 a year, you'd need, with the 20x rule, you take 100,000 multiplied by 25, that gives us 2.5 million, and that's how much money you need to set aside. And you need to take progressively, right? To deduct this money every year for 25 years. Very, very simple, isn't it? It doesn't take into account your taxes, it doesn't take into account your healthcare costs and inflation. But that's a good start, right? That tells you where you start. So that's the first. The second one is the 4% rule. It's a very well-known rule. You probably have read about it before, and it's quite simple. First, it was invented by a financial professional called Bill Bengen. Mid-1980s, I saw 1994, it might have been a bit before. And basically, it tells you that if you have a portfolio of stock and bonds, balanced portfolio, that returns average market return 7 to 9% per year. You could deduct from this portfolio 4% a year without ever running out of money. Let's look at this chart, and you can see the return of the stock market. As you can see, way below 7%, around 9%, but that was the past, and it's probably going to change from now on. More on that later. So that's the basics of where it is. So you extract 4% a year from this. The first year, that's important. I'll give you links for more details on that. And that's how it works. However, very recently, actually for the past 2 years, a lot of people have wondered if the 4% rule was good. And actually Bill Bengen himself recently came out and saying maybe 4% is not enough. Maybe it's too little when the market was going up, but now the market's going down. They're saying maybe 4% is not what you need. Maybe it's 3.5%, maybe it's 3%. The main reason is because now, as I was mentioning, the markets are going down, and the return of the market are probably going to be lower than the chart I just showed you before. So that's it. Those are the two rules, the 25x rule and the 4% rule. Very, very simplified for you. Again, I'm going to have the link in the description below for you to dig deeper. So, how do you get started putting money aside for your retirement? Before I start, again, I'm not a financial advisor. Do not take any advice from me. This is just for information and entertainment purpose. Talk to your financial planner and do your own research. So, the first thing that's very important is to start young. Start as early as possible. It's never too late, but the earlier you start, the better it is, thanks to something called compound interest. The money you accumulate brings more money and rolls, and as the ball gets bigger, like a snowball, it snowballs. Let's look at the screen. If you start at age 25 to put $400 a month aside for 40 years until you're 65, you end up with $1 million. You could end up with $1 million, in theory. If you were to start 10 years later at 35, and you do that for 30 years until 65, then you already get $473,000. That's a very, very big difference. So the earlier, the better. This is the first thing. Now, as I mentioned in my investment video, on which you can click on the side of the screen now if you want to have a refresher, start with your employer benefit. If your employer offers you a matching program for you to invest for your retirement, please take it. This is the first one. It's called 401k in the US, DC or IDECO in Japan. Use that. It's free money. It's better to have it. Then continue investing with everything that gives you tax advantages. In the US, it's the IRA, the Roth IRA. In Japan, you're going to have the Tsumitate and a lot of different things with the same name and those variations. In Singapore, you have the CPF and all the variations on the CPF. Go with that first. Then you continue. Maybe it's life insurance. Life insurance contract also have some tax benefits. Go there. Once you've gone through all of that, continue with maybe a taxable investment account if you still have money. This is all in the video I mentioned before. Then there are different types of investment, like real estate, also interesting and gives you some tax benefits sometimes. Then a lot of different things, alternative investment. If you have money available, this could be different asset class like crypto, different asset class like art, or investing in startup, do angel investing. So there are a lot of different ways. The point is to start early and always think about the changes in the market you are. Taxation are going to change, the fine prints are going to change, maybe the interest rates are going to change, so maybe the interest rates are going to go up, and maybe you should put some of your money on the saving accounts because this gives you additional savings. That could be one of the situation where we can find ourselves in a couple of years as the interest rates are going up. Keep abreast of all of those changes, and keep abreast also about I'm looking for where the interest rate changes, the tax changes, and inflation. Of course, this is how you start planning and investing for your retirement. Time to sum up. As we said, you cannot just depend on the government to pay for your retirement because times have changed. You need to take matter in your own hands, and there are many ways to do so. When you do that, make sure to take into account the change in the taxation, the change in interest rate, and maybe the change in price increase, inflation. And of course, do not put all your eggs in the same basket. Go mix and match your investment broadly. The point is, start early and plan. Do not wait until the last minute, because who wants to be a burden in retirement for your family and friends because you did not plan? And when we're talking about retirement, it doesn't mean that you have to stop cold turkey to start working on all your activities at once. You can be part-time working as well. Keep greater interaction, share your knowledge with others and your experience, and continue to have a lot of activities. Some can bring you additional money as long as your body is able to work. Depending on the type of work you're doing, when not doing it, you really have the choice. Of course, if your health is with you. So that's all I have for you today. I have a lot of research, all the links, if you want to research more for yourself, because that's what you need to do. All the links are going to be in the description box below. So look at it and start planning, start investing early and putting money aside for your retirement to be able to enjoy it as much as possible and not to be too much dependent on where you live. Thank you, everyone. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click the link below. That's gonna help me a lot and help more people discover this video. Do not hesitate to subscribe as well, so you're gonna learn and be notified when new videos are coming. And please also put your comments down, what you want to hear from us. If you think that we made a mistake we should correct, do not hesitate. We'll read the comments and we'll make sure to reply. And finally, if you want to invest in crypto, as I said last time, I put some referral links down below for Bittrex, for FTX Japan, and Bitflyer in Japan. That's all for today. Thank you again, and talk to you very soon. Goodbye.